Thank you, Ayushi. Kind words. The opening, and you spoke about everyone wanting to, experience Bangalore rains and Bangalore weather, etc. I don't know how many of you all are excited for the cricket game that is happening this evening. It's RCB versus PBKS. Any RCB fans in the house?
I'm sure there are RCB.
Boo you guys. Anyway, just kidding. So the reason why we're speaking cricket at an Omnichannel launch is because I'm a big cricket fan, and so is Kanwal, and I gather Prashanth also watches a lot of games. There is an interesting parallel between cricket and retail channels. Test matches. They call it boring, the grind, the maximum number of balls bowled in a year of cricket belongs to test matches. What does that remind you of? Kirana stores, 90% of sales happening there, tough grind, some large, humongous players, etc. Then you have e-commerce. E-commerce is the lowest balls bowled to noise ratio. And you have, in the last decade or so, the largest number of players emanating from the e-commerce space. What does that remind you of? T20. Then somewhere in the middle is that bridge, ODI, which is modern trade, which basically is now trying to find its voice once again. Bilateral modern trade, bilateral ODI series don't work just the way convenience modern trade doesn't. So maybe you're looking at occasions, you're looking at World Cups, you're looking at multi-nation tours, etc. And over the last 2 years, what has happened is this surge in quick commerce. What is quick commerce? It's IPL with an impact player. I guess, players can choose to be players of each format. However, to be called the GOAT, to borrow from the Gen Z language, you have to have W's in all formats. You have to be an all-format player, and that basically is decoding Omnichannel. So, Kanwal, let's start with you first. Players get discovered through the IPL or multiple T20 leagues, etc., while they're made in the domestic Ranji trophies and a lot of these test games that happen. How do you become an all-format player? And by that, I mean, how do you become an all-format consumer company?
So I think can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have to be loud, or the mic has to be loud? Thanks. Okay. So I think it's a great reference. Just to give my personal bias, I'm a Dhoni fan, so that's why not RCB.
Discovered.
True. So I think if you extend that logic, what has really disrupted the business of brands, if I may, in the last 10 years is this whole digital infrastructure. So, what was, painful in your test match analogy, selling to individual small Kirana stores, especially for a young brand, that was almost an impossible task. And why we never saw too much of entrepreneurial activity in consumer brands. So I would say that the genesis of this wave of, consumer brands catering to millennial, Gen Z, new ideas, new age concepts, really got triggered by the whole concept of the digital infrastructure, whether it was the media choices and Varun is here, he will talk about their journey. But, we saw that literally, brick by brick, how you build brands on that. What is happening today is really an extension of that in a very positive way. Clearly, like you said, 90% of consumption is and will continue to be by and large offline. But how do you integrate offline and online? That is omnichannel. And we believe that the real, the key to success and the real, I would say, right to win for some of these new age brands is connecting the dots between the two. And we'll talk about examples. I think there are lots of interesting conversations happening later, so I don't want to steal everyone's thunder. But it is not about online or offline. It is about, can you play test match and ODI and T20 with or without impact player in a seamless manner. And that's really omnichannel for us. And I think this report, and maybe Prashanth can talk a little bit more about specifically what's in the report, but that's our attempt to try and answer for that, to solve for that, that interesting complexity.
Speaking of the report itself, projected retail market in India by 2030 is about $2.2 trillion. And in that itself, the e-commerce opportunity, online opportunity is going to be 150 to 200 billion, that's versus the $65 billion, which it currently is. For the cricket, we have the Wisden coaching manual and all the multiple manuals. I presume that this report that you intend to be the Wisden coaching manual for omnichannel brands?
Yeah, actually, so this is different from, it's very right. It's just not a report in that sense, right, Mangalam, right? So we wanted to not just do another report that gave some case studies and some high-level gyan, right? So we wanted a report that was almost a little bit of a toolkit. So there's, the first part of the report you'll see is a little bit of a landscape of who are the trailblazers. It's to get inspired. So it's just a little bit of an inspiration thing in the beginning. But as you go through the report, you actually have specifics and nuances and intricacies described in when do you actually start playing another form of cricket, right? So, yeah.
So what's the right time? When do you start playing another form of cricket? I mean, you've been an investor, you've been an advisor to a lot of these digital-first brands which began their offline journey and are, taking their steps towards that. Is there any playbook for that? And what has your experience been so far?
So I think it's obviously contextual. Depends on which sector you are in, depends on, what kind of, consumer you're targeting. But by and large, our learning, at least so far, has been that you really start your journey more digitally. So there is a D2C angle, there is an e-commerce angle. How do you, get to understand your consumer better, your product market fit better? There are lots of signals that you can pick up. And the brand building piece is really what online is enabling in a more personalized, more efficient manner. And once you have got a high confidence that you have a strong product market fit, you identify what products are the hero products, what products have affinity to be taken to an offline channel. So to me, that's the philosophical point of entry. Now, you can argue, is it at a 50 crore, 75 crore, 100 crore? And also the goalpost keeps shifting. See, today the infrastructure is such that, you can build a D2C or a digital first brand very quickly to 30, 40, 50 crores. Earlier it used to be, there's a certain, time and effort it takes. So I would not be able to answer you saying, at this point you press the trigger and, there are people who have done it and they probably will give you more specific, examples. But truly the question is not just when you do it, question is how do you do it? And there we see lots of different strategies playing out. There are the EBO models where you create experience centers and you integrate that with your online channel. There are these advisor-based assisted sales models. So the real trick is that the design of your business model, taking all these channels into account, is probably the most important, I would say, step towards building a large-scale brand. And that is really what we are hoping this report can provide as very practical toolkits. In fact, it almost like talks about in which circumstances, what do you do? And that's really exciting because, lots of times, most of the entrepreneurs are first-time entrepreneurs.
Right.
And we hope that this can be seen as a valuable, almost like an add-on toolkit, like Prashanth said.
So we actually give you that roadmap. Right. That, if you're getting started, first of all, how do you test if you're really ready? Like what Kanwal was saying, right? It's not about just some number. I'm at 30 crores, so it's time for me to go do something. I mean, go do the omnichannel thing. So we have specific guidelines which let you kind of test and see where you are and are you ready to take that leap. And we also give you the roadmap from there. How do you pilot? So is there a particular type of format, like you said, is that the right starting point for you, and how do you pilot that? And then we also give you metrics on what to measure to see if that pilot has been successful. And then for every stage from there, all the way to going nationwide or trying multiple other formats that in the omnichannel space, we kind of have you kind of see that graded journey and how do you go through that graded journey. There's a little bit of a hand-holding through this guide.
The inherent assumption in this is that this is a playbook while this is the roadmap that you take, hoping for the roadmap to stay constant while, the world is evolving. I'm not sure how much it takes into account what the competition might do. Because yes, you might be a 30, 40, even 100 crore player online, which is basically consolidation of all the long tail products. But the minute you go offline, you do have, the gatekeepers, so to say, of that world as well. How do you navigate through that? And how do you, prepare for a possibility that those gatekeepers will shut the door with a very tight lock?
So I'm answering this little philosophically, Mangalam. I think that, in the frenzy of seeing so many new brands and excitement and, the fancy terms like D2C, et cetera, we have forgotten that fundamentally we are building consumer brands. So to me, the insight of what exactly is that need or the problem you're solving, how you're different from the market or whoever else is out there. I mean, the 101 of brand building doesn't change. I mean, it was what it was 100 years ago and it is what it is today. It's the actual models and the disruption in various aspects of the models which are changing. So as long as you have that ability to say, I have a product which the consumer loves for this reason, and they identify with my brand for this reason, I think if those fundamentals are answered, then the question of, gatekeepers, also they are also people who are building it for a profit. So if there is a demand that I am generating for a product, whether it is through my online channels or whether it is through, Instagram or any of the, social media options, eventually the consumer is looking for that particular brand, that particular product, because they want to consume it. So I would still go back to the basics and not, honestly, again, there's lots of examples we can talk about from our learnings, portfolios, and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, if the consumer believes that this is something that I want and I want it from my neighborhood store, then there is no reason why the store will not keep that product. So you can still have strategies of, where you want to start, how you want to distribute. So the complexity of the business you have to answer for. But this question of saying that there's a gatekeeper who will not keep me because there is competition, it defeats the fundamental question of saying, why am I different from competition? Why does consumer love me? I would answer for that and then, look at, why I'm worried about the gatekeeper, to be honest.
So there's another dimension to look at it, right? So I'm what you call as gatekeepers, incumbents, legacy players, whatever you want to call them. So I think the current entrepreneurs, I think just their ability to be very nimble and agile and be able to kind of very quickly iterate the product online and then take it offline. I guess that's one part of the cycle that they're able to compress. So their learning on the product actually is their benefit. They have very quickly kind of understood, to Kanwal's point, what does the customer want? So that nobody can take that away, even if it's an incumbent. So that's a big thing. The second thing is going offline is not just building two discrete channels, right? So it's about how do you integrate this? And that integration requires technology. And that is where I think, again, some of the younger entrepreneurs, the current entrepreneurs who are digital first and have the capability to build that integration and convergence and a very continuous experience between the online journey and where they actually might actually buy, which could be offline. I think the ability of the entrepreneur to do that, I think gives them a leg up with the gatekeepers.
Do you think an IPL player, before getting into the test team, has to prove his mettle in the ODI team as well, in the sense that is modern trade a good bridge to actually look at traditional trade? Because it's easier access and the consumer is more receptive?
So again, it's a very generic question, so I'm not able to give you, but I'll tell you the fundamental where we have seen most success is that format of supermarkets where consumers can browse, they get a choice. See, what we grew up in, and certainly my generation grew up in, was standing behind a counter and telling the shopkeeper what I want. So then that list becomes my, discovery. There is no real discovery happening. Today, the formats are allowing me to browse through aisles, to identify, see what is new. I'm curious. I would love to try out new products. So that format works. I would argue that modern trade, if you define it as the large global chains or national chains, I would not even encourage our companies to go there first. because there are these, regional and standalone supermarket chains which make a far easier point of entry. Again, there is a discovery, what sells, how will it sell, what kind of demand is there, how do you generate demand. In fact, a lot of our companies are doing a lot of experiments. Is it, somebody standing there and convincing you? Is it some promotion? Is it buy one, get one free? So I would again say the same thing, that offline is not a bad word. Offline is the future of any brand. You cannot deny that. It's really that, the journey of how you do it and how you integrate it. See, we're looking at technology intervention. We're looking at data. We're looking at, seamless customer journeys across channels and across different formats. That is the disruption. It's not the disruption that suddenly we can build, mega brands purely in one channel, which was never the intent. I think it's just that the ecosystem and the infrastructure is allowing us to be more experimentative and things. So, I think that analogy becomes a little bit difficult to break it down. But I think supermarket as a format is certainly a high discovery format for most of the new brands.
Yeah, it's useful because of the ability to have assisted sales and engagement to kind of build that experience, right? So, which is not very easy if you go to, your GT or those kinds of formats where if you're already a brand that has built a lot of goodwill, salience, then there is more value for that. So I think the timing and the amount of assisted sales experience that you would require, I think would determine if there is a need to even do modern trade. And like Kanwal said, I think the modern trade itself has become very much not a single kind of modern trade. So we actually talk about that in the report. Now, how do you pick the right modern trade?
Exactly. If he spoke specifics, then you all wouldn't read the report, which is why we're speaking in generalities and trying to bring the lowest common denominator out here. While, success is pretty specific to each company at the stage in which it is, the category in which it is, what the philosophy of the brand, etc. is. But I'm sure there are a few commonalities in the missteps. And that is something I think would be of immense value to everyone who's listening here. What, according to you, are the top 3 do not do's for omnichannel, or which would be a short route to failure?
So again, a few learnings from our own experiences with various companies. I would say that the most critical learning curve is identifying that model of what works. So again, from a strategy, you could argue that some companies, since you mention specifics, company like Sleep Company in our portfolio, they set up a store to learn from saying, what are consumers coming to me for? How do I bring them in? Can I then integrate that with my, online experience? So there is a learning experience that you can test for in certain categories. Fashion is one of them, any home lifestyle products is one of them. Then you have this whole concept of assisted sales, especially in beauty and personal care. Now, what kind of models work? What kind of stores give you the kind of response? What is the economic model that is working? So I think first immediate do is not to. So the negative learning is, when we meet companies who say, I am in 2,000 stores across 25 cities. Now, to me, that is a don't do, because, the managing inventory, managing working capital, managing even the expanse of 25 cities with average of 20, 30 stores, 40 stores in each city makes no sense. So therefore, I would say that the more than the don'ts, the do's are that you learn as much as you learn on the online, there is enough to learn in the offline world. Second part is that if you treat it as 2 completely independent businesses, I think that is the other don't. So, today, what is most attractive of omnichannel is that you can find a lot of ways to integrate, whether it's at the warehousing level, logistics level. Again, Sleep Company is an example I'm taking, because they integrate the entire customer journey on the same platform. So whether you are ordering in a store, you're ordering online, it's on the same platform, and that makes it seamless as far as the consumer is concerned. So there are lots of these aspects which one has to, obviously keep in mind. And I would say the biggest don't is don't treat it as two separate, like with hard lines in the middle saying an ODI player can never become a test match player in your analogy.
Right. How about you?
Yeah, so I think there's another way to kind of just look at what Kanwal said, which is being data-driven, right? So I think we talk a lot about that in the report, that can you take your learnings from your consumer, your hotspots where your consumers are consuming, and different parts of the country are different in India. So can you take that learning from what you've been doing online and use that to get a starting point when you go offline, right? So being driven by the data that you already have on the clusters that are working and the regions that are working. I think not being driven by that and thinking in isolation, I think is not great. The second part is actually like I said, there is a digitization that is required across the supply chain to make this entire thing work. And the multiple nodes that there are in the supply chain and that are kind of fulfilling that whole product and experience, not building a platform that integrates this entire experience is, I think, also a mistake.
So I'll give you an interesting example, which is not in the report. This is a company called Licious, which does meat home delivered. Most of us know about them. What they did is very interesting. They looked at the online data that they have because they do direct delivery, and they identified 100 hot zones in the country where they were seeing a huge amount of demand, which was there in hottest areas. So how do you cater first to that consumer? And they have done some very interesting work in almost isolating those markets and creating cluster strategies there. Then when you're looking at going offline, that becomes your hotspots. This is not even a city strategy. This is a cluster strategy which is based on data that you get on an online basis. I believe now Google has some specific capabilities where they can pinpoint to you kind of density of retail and the kind of products that are being searched for in those markets. So there is a lot of that possibility of, again, how do you integrate the learnings and create this seamless customer experience? And I'm just reiterating that point because to me, that is omni-channel and not online or offline.
Got it.
So the last thing, and kind of one more mistake, is not understanding the economics, or they're not familiar with. It's a very new world. You're used to one format, and when you go to this new format, they really don't know how to assess the economics of a store business, economics in a very different distribution channel. So that's again, there is some guidance in the report on how do you look at your economics.
All right. So he's given us quite a tease. So if I had to, make it into a snackable format for you guys, the short ways to failure would perhaps be one, looking at just the vanity of reach and the number of cities that you're reaching. The second thing, of course, would be to not look into your data and go as per the cluster approach. And the third, of course, would to be looking at unit economics of your business itself. Final question before we just do a couple of power play range hitting shots. You are speaking about omni-channel from, so far the conversations that we've had are from the perspective of a digital brand which is now looking to go offline. Let's flip it and look at brands which are successful offline. What is it that those guys should do to be successful online?
Never really thought about it so far.
I mean, it's omni-channel. I guess works both ways.
Yeah, I mean, that is not our worldview. So, I don't have a very strong answer for you. All I can say is that the opportunity for offline brands to go online is today being manifested with some of the larger players. And whatever we are working with them, whatever we are noticing with them, I think they are finding this still to be an experimental channel. So honestly, I would call it a positive for most of our entrepreneurs because it is still not, an omni-channel play in that sense because, you're still 2%, 3% of the total revenue. So, what should they do? I will, I'm humble enough not to prescribe to the big boys on what they should do, but it is not today become such a large, at least in my understanding, such a large imperative that it starts threatening the other way around.
No, I think there are very new formats. I mean, you spoke about quick commerce. We've not spoken too much about quick commerce. That's one way that some of the legacy brands are quickly experimenting and saying, can they serve a new customer differently? So that's one.
Quick commerce has definitely powered up all these
Legacy
format players who come in as impact players. A couple of questions. Do you think current companies are, the current lot of companies are more ingrained to be IPO'd than what it was earlier, which created a wave of, just a lot of brands creating platforms? Now companies are setting themselves up for an IPO. Do you think that's the case more?
I mean, that's a bouncer, but
Yeah. Last over. Come on, I had to.
I think so, yes. I think, see, the roadmap for what will make a company, let's say, hypothetically, we say 1,000 crores revenue and, a certain level of profitability, we can start visualizing the roadmap to that number. And that's really the beauty of, what we are seeing in the market today. There's a huge consuming market looking for choices, not enough brands, and lots of these, infrastructural pathways to make it happen. So we are early stage investors. We come in when a company is doing 10 crores. So to say a 10 crore company becoming 1,000 crore is a huge leap of faith. But at least we are training ourselves to say what will take it to that level and how we can help them get there. So short answer is that can you see a lot of companies, crossing the 500 crore, 1,000 crore mark and building long-term sustainable businesses? Answer is yes. Now they choose to go IPO or not IPO. I think those are all questions which are more specific. Yeah.
No, I think it's an imperative. I think omnichannel is, you have a better shot at going IPO if you are omnichannel. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, by the way, when we were speaking about how large format offline players can actually become online, I think the easiest way is to acquire some of these brands that these guys have invested in already. Final question then, if from your portfolio or outside, if you had to name one company which you think has done omnichannel the best so far, both of you all have to say it.
I'll be thrown out of the room if I don't say Mamaearth. So
Varun's here. Okay, Varun, just don't listen. Can you give me another one? I was just kidding.
So I think to me, obviously what Varun is doing is a gold standard for FMCG. And I think he has a session, so he'll talk about it. I would call out Sleep Company. I think they have done a phenomenal job in how they have integrated the story of omnichannel. Outside of portfolio, Lenskart, I think, is a great example.
Piyush will be here soon as well.
I think in our portfolio, I would say Bluestone. I think they've really shown what's the benchmark when it comes to experience. How do you create a unified experience and use technology to create that elevated experience online and offline?
All right, fine. Thank you. That's up. Time's up. That's what it says to us. I hope this teased you enough to go ahead and look into the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.